Ladies and gentlemen, it's been quite the minute. I'd say that minute has been around, 3 months, I'd say? No, I believe the last time we recorded was around August, but it's been an eventful 3 months, particularly when you're a Lakers fan. There's been a lot happening. The roster's been completely filled out, almost. There's still some training camp bodies and two-way competitions that are going to be tested out in the preseason. So we're excited for that, but the main people that we're going to see throughout the season are placed within the roster, and we're going to get a little bit into that, but we are recording after the preseason. It's really kind of weird to see fans at the Staples Arena since it's been so long.
But so great.
But even though it wasn't a full packed house, it's still something, and that something is way better than what we've had for I don't even know the time span on that. Probably a year. So, I'm excited. How have you seen the last 3 months yourself, Dolos?
It's been an exciting time. A lot of tweets have been bookmarked in this time just to see how these takes turn out on the Lakers, because there's been so much slander. There's been this divisive narrative that somehow we're this retirement home, but at the same time we're also some super team. But it's going to be very interesting to see how things play out, regardless of whether they actually turn out in our favor or not. But I'm kind of really positive. I think we have the pieces. I think there's still moves that can be made. Maybe some buyout signings that can happen. But for right now, I think we grabbed as much shooting as we can, and it's really going to be on Frank Vogel to coach up the defense.
Yeah, I think at minimum we can expect quite a bit, which is something super exciting because having a low floor, it just puts you in kind of in a comfortable spot, but also that of excitement. And the ceiling on this team is even more exciting than that, because different than last year, there's chemistry to be had for sure. And it's not just a little mumbo jumbo after LeBron and AD and the missed KCP, which I'm still not going to forgive for trading. But anyways, there's a lot under the 3 stars to be excited about, especially the Kentucky bred Malik Monk, which I am absolutely going to get in my bag later on. But I think outside of the obvious, what's something that's got you super hyped for the regular season and throughout the preseason?
So for the regular season, something I'm excited about is the defensive combination of what Russell Westbrook looks like in the pick and roll with Anthony Davis. And, that obviously relies on AD being at the 5 for those minutes. But I was in a Twitter space with some Westbrook fans, and we were just chopping it up about preseason stuff and expectations. And something we were talking about is just how good Russell Westbrook is as a ball pressure guard. And a lot of the times that has involved, gambling for steals. He's not been great with screen navigation. That's one of his greater weaknesses. I think every Westbrook fan will admit that to you. But then having Anthony Davis, someone who has the abilities to recover as well as he can, and I think judiciously we can decide to do some switches when it's Westbrook, because he is 6'3", but he's strong, so he can hold up on certain matchups. I think something we should definitely look into doing defensively this year is, I think this is something more teams should do defensively anyway, is switch but just kind of scram out. I hate to bring up Boston, but I do know that they've done this a lot under Brad Stevens, where they'll let a switch happen where Marcus Smart or Kemba gets a big guy on them, but they've done a good job of communicating and rotating that guy out of there. So I think I'd love to see some of that. I'd love to see some of Russell Westbrook right there at the point of attack, pressuring guys and trying to get steals easy.
For sure. And I think I'm going to agree a little bit more with LeBron's statements that I believe he said a few days ago, where the transition game is going to come back for sure. And I'm excited to see all those highlights. I know that's a little shallow, but it was missing, and so It's just something I
Yeah.
want to see with Westbrook, LeBron, and AD. I can just feel like a three-man play that's going to be one of the highlights of the not only the Lakers season but the whole NBA season. I'm just excited to see what order that highlight play is going to go through and what it's going to end with for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely right because that's kind of an underrated thing that I missed from our title team. I think I saw some article during that 2020 season. Maybe I'll look it up after this so I can post it with the podcast. But that team was really on track to just like have more lobs than Lob City. Like the dunks, the highlights were so real with that 2020 title team, and it was so fun to watch every night. And this past season, it wasn't that. We had some more ground bound centers in Marc Gasol, but I think lobs will be flying and they're going to be out on the break a lot.
Also, something that has to be mentioned immediately is the Rondo and Westbrook like fake beef that's going on, and it's really cool to see.
Like, I don't know. It's not fake beef. They don't like each other. I mean, they're now teammates, but like, I think if you ask them, yeah, I think before this point, if you ask them about like hanging out, they would not have been hanging out if they were not teammates. But at the same time, I think they're both professionals and like they realize they're on a team with a chance to get a title. So not liking each other doesn't mean anything. They're gonna work towards the collective goal and maybe even bond over it. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I can't wait to see how. I don't envision them being on the court together too many times, but
oh god, hopefully not at all.
Yeah, like something would have to go wrong at that point. But yeah, it would. It'll just be exciting to see some of the memes that come out of that, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the more that I think about it, though, I've historically been like down on Rondo, but his 3-point shooting numbers have been kind of like trending upward. There is some proof that he's like a decent enough shooter. I know like the looks he gets are always pretty much wide open. Like he doesn't really take them unless he gets really good looks. But I mean, that's valuable to have that. So I think also defensively, he can do some things. I don't want him sharing the floor with Westbrook a lot, but maybe I can be convinced in a certain lineup. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I would agree. I think at that point maybe it'd be garbage time or something of that sort. But
yeah, if it's garbage time, Westbrook gotta hit the bench and just let's
chill
pull out and ride to a win. Yeah, put THT in, put Monk in, Nunn, whoever.
For sure. It's also been a little while since, like we mentioned, there was some of the roster that has been filled up. Some of the more honorable mentions, we already said that there are some of the last roster spots for the two ways are being fought for, but Melo, Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard, and DeAndre Jordan are the main players that joined front since the last recording of the podcast.
Whoa, is this Austin Reeves erasure? Like, he
sure,
had his two-way deal converted over into a 2-year contract, so Austin Reeves, yup.
Hillbilly Kobe. We're keeping him on the DL for now. So then when we mention him a game before a historic night, then we look like geniuses. Just a little more though. But do you have any thoughts? I saw a little more controversy with the first two with Melo and Trevor Ariza because some people were favoring Ariza in the starting lineup, as I personally would, mainly because Melo is just that much more of a household figure. And I can understand some of the hype that you'd want to see in a, what would that be? A Melo, a Westbrook. What shooting guard would you want in that lineup? If Melo is starting, who would you want as the shooting guard? I think that's an interesting. Maybe Wayne Ellington.
I've said this from the start that I think it's going to be Kent Bazemore. I just think that makes a lot of sense to have it be Bazemore. I mean, the rumors were that when we signed him, he turned down money elsewhere. Like, I don't think you do that without being promised a role or being promised something. So
where have I heard that before?
You're right, but at the same time, he's a good enough defender that I trust him in the starting lineup, and he shot 40% last year. So he's always been streaky as a career shooter, but that just means if his 3-point shooting numbers go down over the course of the season, we have like justification for Frank Vogel to come to him and be like, hey, now we got to put you on the bench. Like your number, maybe we'll find a better role for you there where your numbers can go up. So
Yeah,
that's
but
just my thought process on it.
my question is for you: would you want Ariza or like this is gonna test your true love for the Lakers and your sanity? But what would you rather have, Ariza or Melo? Because I feel like this is a very divisive question.
I'd rather have Melo on the bench.
Okay, good. Because see, the thing is, you got to think about the second unit, and with that second unit,
Yeah.
there's some scorers, but would you rather? I'd rather have Melo be the leading scorer within the second unit and get some action here and there, and maybe be in a closing lineup if you want to like if the scoring just isn't there for the main unit. But yeah, I think it's just a much more smart move to just have him be that second unit sixth man for sure.
I mean, now that I
Sixth man
think
of the
about
year,
it, though,
maybe.
there are a lot of guys on our bench that kind of want to shoot a lot. Now that I'm thinking, I mean, like THT is the guy who will get his field goal attempts. Like he does his thing. He's on ball. There's Wayne Ellington. Like if he's beyond that 3-point arc, he's liable to let it go. There's Kendrick Nunn, who's liable to take a shot every time he has the ball. Malik Monk is not exactly going to pass up every look. So adding Melo to the bench is interesting because, also he's not known to pass up on a bucket either.
Yeah, 100%. Something like you said, I feel like that's low key a problem to be had with so many scorers on the bench, but I feel like that's more of a good problem than a bad problem because defense can be schemed. We saw that with Frank Vogel last year, where literally AD, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, leaves with injuries here and there, and they're still the number one defense. So I'd rather have a defensive problem with Frank Vogel than a scoring one because you can teach.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right because there were so many points last season and even during 2020 where we're a bad half court offense because they're just like we're spending most of the possession trying to get a good post possession for Anthony Davis or LeBron that ends up not really working out. Now we're fighting the shot clock and guys are passing up looks and somebody has to throw up a grenade. And at least now it's guys who can maybe make some tough shots. So hopefully that ends up working out, but that also is some high variance stuff to have your offense maybe rely on in the half court.
Yep. Do you want to transition a little more into maybe some concerns that have popped out other than, like I stated, that good problem that we have? Is there anything that you think was not completely filled out going into the season that you think is going to come back and bite a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have mainly brought up the concern of maybe we needed to add another wing. I know James Ennis was the name commonly thrown around. I don't really agree necessarily that we need another wing because I just feel like in the important minutes, we're going to have LeBron out there on the wing. Anthony Davis is he's a transformer. He can kind of play anywhere. I think Trevor Ariza, Kent Bazemore, whatever. We have enough perimeter guys. I think the thing that I'm really concerned about is, we didn't get a Marc Gasol replacement in the fact of like just a 3-point shooting big man. Because even with Anthony Davis at the 5, like he's not really a great 3-point shooter. And unless he's hitting his mid-range jumpers like he was in the bubble, like, that as a spacing option, teams still choose to sag off of him when he's just kind of spotted up. So I would have liked to have a reliable 3-point threat like big man who would, is liable to take 2 or 3 every time he's out there. So I think that's the thing I'd like to see us add the most. Possibly Kevin Love buyout. Just gonna, maybe manifest that as well.
We did a while ago.
UCLA product.
Westbrook,
I believe he went there same time as Russell Westbrook. Obviously, the LeBron connection there. So I know a lot of people have also linked him with Portland because that's where he's from, but come on. Who wants to go there? Just
True.
come and be a spot up 3 point, pick and pop big for the Lakers.
I mean, some of the names I'm looking at here, like what was other than Kevin Love, you're describing a 3-point center. Which one would you like if DeAndre Jordan didn't get signed? Which one, just to play a little devil's advocate here, which one would you have rather had on that
Oh,
roster?
the guy I was hoping and praying for was Gorgie Dang. Gorgie Dang was like ideal situation because I think like he's a good 3 point threat. I think he's also a solid enough like defender. I think he's kind of can be mobile. I think in a system where he has other good defensive pieces, Gorgie Dang would have been helpful in my eyes. But I believe he ended up signing in San Antonio, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll check that
Him
for
or
you.
like maybe like Bielitsa who signed with the Warriors, but
Yeah,
he
it
was
the
kind of
Hawks.
washed for Miami, so who knows?
Gorgie is on the Hawks, which.
Oh, he's on. Yeah, he definitely is on the Hawks. My bad.
Yeah, no, you're
He was
fine.
traded to the Spurs. Yeah, but Gorgie Dang would have been a nice signing, I think.
I agree, but thankfully this is something that we're absolutely nitpicking, and it is like the 11th
You're right.
man on the roster. So
In some ways, because we do have to mention that Marc Gasol was traded. He was then kind of, I guess, like bought out, retired with the Memphis Grizzlies. Ton of respect to Marc Gasol. Although his time here didn't end the way we would have loved it to, a lot of us wanted him to come back. He just wanted to go back home and retire and go to Spain. And, you can't knock a guy for that. So wishing him all the best.
yeah, it really would have been something to see the other Gasol brother win with the Lakers, but some things just weren't meant to be, and I'm glad for the Grizzlies fans that he did get to spend some time, if like maybe one day there, but.
Yeah, we should get to talking about the preseason game, but I do also want to mention while we're on the subject of Gasol brothers that I believe Paul Gasol officially announced his retirement. So obviously that brought a lot of Lakers fans into discussing the jersey retirement thing for him, and totally agree. He should get his number up there. That number 16 shouldn't be getting worn again. I am. Also going to use this as a way to plug the video I've been procrastinating on for forever now. That's going to come out at some point, like before the season starts or like at the start of the season or whatever. But that's going to be about like jerseys and all-time jersey numbers and the most worn jersey numbers and things like that.
Ooh, I'll be on the lookout for that for sure. Random
Yeah,
question:
great-
if you were
great
drafted
stuff.
tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but if you were signed, and the team said, "Okay, we'll give you any number," what team or what number would you choose?
I think I'd go with number 32.
32? Oh, dude,
32.
that threw me off. Why 32? That's such a random number.
It is a random number, but it actually happens to be the number that's been retired by the most teams in the NBA. 11 of 30 franchises have that number retired.
I did not know that. That's good to know. Personally, I'd go with the 17, replacing Schroeder there.
17.
Oh,
I feel like that's way more random than 32.
are we gonna have a 17 versus 32 debate here? 32 is
We might have to. Hold on, where's my phone? Because I think I actually have the list of all the stars that have worn whatever numbers on here, and I'm gonna let you know.
It's
who's
much
worn
more honorable
17.
than 17. 17 is not a very historic number in the NBA, but it's a cool looking number.
We do have to
especially-
mention former Laker Andrew Bynum
For
for
sure.
the number 17. We don't want to associate with that with Schroeder.
You're right. I think John Havlicek is probably the best to wear that number. Probably Chris
Yeah,
Mullin
you're
is up
right.
there.
Yeah, Chris Mullin.
Jeremy Lin, hey, Linsanity. Can't forget about him. He has a place in NBA history. Probably not with the Lakers, but
Yeah, I was only tracking All Stars, so he didn't quite make make it onto my radar. But Jeremy Lin, yeah, very solid career for him. Also an NBA champ, so shout out to him.
Rick Fox.
Oh, yeah,
That's all
we
I'm saying.
we were we're going on too long about jersey numbers. We should probably get into talking about the
Yes, we should.
preseason
Yes.
game.
A number that we
So
don't want to know is the box score at the end, but thank God it's the preseason because we do not want that. That was just not enjoyable as a Lakers
yeah, I
fan.
definitely tuned out at the end. The beginning of the preseason game was all that really mattered because that was the time we got to see Anthony Davidson. First initial reaction to all of this is why in the world was he starting in the front court with DeAndre Jordan? But it's preseason. I'm not going to overreact to that being the lineup, but I just did not want to see that as like a basketball viewing experience.
I mean, they started off the preseason and they came back with a lot of good intentions for your eyes. I think they heard your comments throughout the Twitter realm and said, yeah, no, let's just start things perfectly for you. But yeah, I think seeing Anthony Davis there, he's definitely bulked up quite a bit. I think it's way more noticeable. And hopefully it'll be for use throughout the season, and especially through the playoffs. But it'll be interesting to see how, if in any way, that'll affect his former play style, where he was a little more loose with the ball, got up to the perimeter and all things of that sort, or maybe he's going to transition to more of a balanced thing. I'm not sure which one will be more beneficial in the long run, but it is certainly interesting and exciting to see how that affects his game.
Yeah. Also, preseason reaction. Talked about this before we started recording. But Wayne Ellington missing like everything he put up was like not a good case for you to as the starting two guard. I believe Frank Vogel had a quote coming out that that position is still up for grabs, and it's really going to come down to who can give the team the best balance of 3-point shooting and defense, which the quote of the year, very obvious, but that's I think really what it's going to come to. And you have to state that and let these guys know that's the expectation in preseason. If you want to be the starting two guard, we need to see you hit some of those shots.
Yeah, he certainly did not help his case there, but someone, and I think we're already going to get into it, that did make his case to start as a shooting guard is Malik Monk, and he had a solid 15 points, and I'm telling you, once he gets that thing rolling, and I think even LeBron or AD said it himself, you got to look out, because, I mean, it's just such a luxury. Like I've said this before, it's just such a luxury to have Malik Monk, who, if I'm not mistaken, is literally on a vet minimum at 23. It's wild, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just super excited to see how. I mean, I'm just really more confused as to how we even got to the point to where he's on the team, but it's a great start for him so far, and I think at some point, I don't know how long it's going to take, he's going to get a lot more minutes, and I mean, maybe he might just start this early, because he's certainly helping himself in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of people float him as the potential starting two guard. I think that's a very popular idea on Twitter, but I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
Defensively, it's not a smart
Yeah,
option.
he's been a suspect defender at multiple positions in his career. So there's also just kind of the fact that he was not good until last year. So that is cause for some concern. The fact that the Hornets, the team that drafted him, the team that he was a lottery pick for, that very easily could have kept him, was maybe that was a fluke here. We're fine with letting you go for the veterans minimum.
Well, here's to hoping that's not the only mistake the Hornets have made with the Lakers. So
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's just former Laker Mitch Kupchak doing us a favor after signing Luol Deng. That, if Malik Monk works out for us, I think that's just what we can consider this as: Mitch Kupchak repaying the franchise.
for sure. I mean, we got a little Mac McClung action, but I mean,
Oh, did we? Yeah, I started to tune out. I mean, I'm Austin Reeves Hive already, so
I feel like at some point,
Unfortunately, there's no more room in my heart for Mac McClung.
you're
I'm
definitely
friends
gonna
with Steve Reeves.
purchase.
I'm friends with Austin Reeves now.
You're gonna get a Hillbilly Kobe shirt at some point. I'm already calling that. If it comes out ever, if it gets to that point, I know you're gonna be one of the first in line for that.
I don't know that I could get any shirt that says hillbilly on it, but I mean, if some decent Reeves merch comes out that does not say hillbilly on it, maybe.
Is this hillbilly slander?
Yes, this is hillbilly slander.
Did anyone else stand out for you? I mean, if we're gonna go a little into the Nets, Cam Thomas, you and I were both talking about that. Cam Thomas is looking like a really good draft pick, although it is going to be weird because he's not going to get that many minutes or that many points throughout the NBA season. But, it is really cool to see a player of that caliber.
Yeah, I guess there is some flux with Brooklyn's guys. Like, they can totally just decide to load manage guys. There's also the question mark of if Kyrie will be playing home games. So maybe more minutes than we think will open up for him. That kid was getting buckets. Like, he has no conscience. Might be a little concerned with like the shot pass decisions, but this is a preseason game, so I'm sure everyone was telling him to just shoot.
Yeah, and
would love to see him in regular season context if he can be a bit more pass centric at times.
Yeah, we also saw. I'm glad to see LaMarcus Aldridge back out there, especially after what he went through. Paul Millsap, seeing him. I mean, he got a double-double. Seeing him in the Nets, it's just so many names, recognizable names for me, and on one team. And Sekou is even doing pretty good. And we saw a little sour when I saw Devontae get 9 points up. But I mean,
shout out to him. Devontae. Yeah,
he's
hopefully, he's on like a training camp deal. Like, if he doesn't stick in Brooklyn, rooting for him, hoping he lands somewhere.
Yeah, we also saw a little more of the Sean D. Brown. I believe that's how you say it. Hopefully, I did not butcher that. But
Sean D. Brown.
Sean D. Brown. We saw him.
Yeah, he was getting buckets too. That was great because the broadcast. I don't know if you were listening to it, but the broadcast pointed out that they actually brought someone in to sub for him, but then he just started scoring so much, and like the quarter ended, there was never really an opportunity, and at that point there was just kind of no reason to sub him out. He was playing so well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see him fight for that one of those last two spots. So, I mean, he's already on the right pace. So, is there anything from now until the end of the preseason that you maybe are looking for? Is there anything you're scouting on? Because Talon did have his good numbers and all of that, but we already are a little more familiar with him. But is there anyone that's maybe under the radar that you think is going to show out from here to then?
I don't know if I'm watching any player like specifically. I'm more so just trying to like watch what we're doing. Like, what are we doing in the half court? Like, what are we doing defensively? Like what are our schemes when it comes to pick and roll coverages, things like that. That's more so what I'm concerned with, because I think this is going to be Frank Vogel testing things out and seeing what he likes and seeing what he thinks will work. And I think that will kind of set my expectation as well, because just as we see, like, hey, if we're experimenting in this game with playing guys up at the level, like, if it works well, maybe we can anticipate more of that in the regular season, or, kind of hope for it in the regular season, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think there's going to be some play that are run, some defensive setups, some rotations that we're going to get previews of, and I think it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that's a good idea in the preseason. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I need a little more of that establishment of Malik Monk, just to get some people's heads turning around a little more. I know it is the preseason, and I don't know whose idea it was to play the Nets No. But yeah, I do need to see a little more Malik Monk action. Oh, dude, we cannot talk. But yeah, I need to see that a little more just to get that things rolling, help his case out, and get him super hot into the season and get rolling into that in that portion. And I mean, Ayayi had my interest, but I don't know yet. But I think throughout the preseason, maybe he'll get a little more scoring action here and there. But yeah, I mean,
he didn't even get a chance to get off the bench for a while.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of Rondo. I don't know. The number changed a little bit, but other than that, he got a little more action. But nothing great stood out. It wasn't a great start.
Change for him. Oh my god, I hate it so much.
Yeah, the 4
fact
looks
he
so
has
ugly.
Caruso's number bothers me so much.
The 4 just isn't it.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying put number 4 in the rafters or anything, but, like, man, do we have to give it up to Rondo?
Was it too soon?
Season? Like, it's just too soon for me. And, like, Rondo, of all people, he was stealing Caruso's minutes in the 2020 season, and now he's doing this. Like, it just hurts. It's just salt in the wound.
In a very raw wound.
Very much so. I mean, I'm very happy I'm gonna get to see him play in my city, but
yeah, I was gonna say that. At least you're local now with Caruso.
Everywhere I go, if I see like a bald head, I'm on the lookout. I'm like, oh my goodness, am I gonna spot Caruso here? Hoping to manifest that at some point during, I believe, his 3-year deal, that I can just run into him at somewhere downtown.
At what point? Because even I saw I don't know if this was in one of his if he had a mini doc or something, but I think he was at a gas station, walked in, no one recognized him. Do you think he's at the point to where for out of every 10 people in Chicago, let's say he walks in public, let's say out of 10 people, how many people do you think would recognize him? Because I'm feeling a strong 6.
I don't know if he's gonna have that recognition in Chicago yet. I don't think he's there yet in Chicago. I think I'm closer to maybe 3 or 4 are gonna spot him and recognize him. I think just in Chicago, I'm imagining Caruso walking around and he's fairly tall. I think he's 6'3", 6'4", but I think he would just kind of look like some white guy.
Just that? Now let's say he wore a headband. Would that number go up a little bit? Just wore a headband?
Yeah, it would definitely go up. I mean, he would definitely have to be in the headband to get spotted way more and for people to realize that that's him.
Was there anything else out of that game 1 that stood out a little more to you that you'd like to get your last thoughts on?
Have I mentioned DeAndre Jordan starting with Anthony Davis, or was that before we started recording?
You mentioned your dislike a little bit, but not fully.
Oh my goodness! Again, I just don't want to see it. I don't really want to see DeAndre Jordan minutes in general. I just think give me a reason to put in DeAndre Jordan over Dwight Howard. What's the matchup that makes sense that we're now choosing? We already have a carbon copy of it. It just didn't make that much sense to me as a signing when we need a spacing element. I think we have really good role threats for Russell Westbrook in pick and roll. I think Dwight Howard can do it well. I think DeAndre Jordan can do that well. I think Anthony Davis is obviously going to be exceptional doing that, but I don't think we have a great spacing threat for Russ in pick and rolls, and I think that's going to make things so ugly in the half court sometimes. Even when you do have a good role threat, if the defense is good enough, if they can just kind of pressure you well enough and cover and help each other on the roll, that kind of will negate everything to an effect.
I mean, if you really want to get into the whole DeAndre Jordan, who's to say, another devil's advocate here, not that I would say this, but who's to say he's not just the JaVale McGee of 2 years later? What would differentiate the situation?
I think with Russell Westbrook on this team, we need spacing more than we did that year. So, like, in that season where I didn't really mind having, like, two traditional bigs, this year I at least want the versatility and the option of, like, a big that will legitimately be a threat to shoot. Like, unless Anthony Davis is literally going to improve to, like, 40%, 40 plus, then I'm kind of concerned about that area. Particularly in the playoffs, I think in the regular season, if we can really juice the transition game, I think we'll be fine enough. But I'm not gonna lie that I'm concerned about that as like a playoff concern. If we end up losing in the playoffs, and I've said this for the past 2 seasons now, it's going to be because we did not have enough shooting around our drivers, our guys who want to get to the rim. It's going to be because guys can just sag off and help in the paint.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And even in the transition game, unless DeAndre Jordan is the one rebounding, then he wouldn't really help in that facet. And I really don't know how his speed compares to JaVale McGee. Although that's a race I'd pay some money to watch. But yeah, I don't really know how that's going to go. Even though you and I both know at some point there's going to be a game where your worst fears are going to show up. I'm just hoping it's going to be that one game. But yeah, transitioning into the whole previewing the season, which we'll get a little more into in the next episode. Do you have any bold / hot takes that you're willing to die on the hill at the moment?
Yeah, I don't know how hot of a take this is, but I'm really just bothered by anyone that's praising Utah's offseason. In general, I will admit I'm just a Utah hater and I'm a Jazz slander account, but I really just don't see, like, I think they had a decent draft picking Jared Butler. I think he was a really good prospect that might have won in the lottery or like in the 20s or something if he did not have those medical concerns. So I think that's a really good pickup. But I don't think they added any free agents that fundamentally change why I think they're fraudulent in the postseason. Like, they don't have a versatile like big that they can go to like a small ball option. Like, people are saying, oh, they added Rudy Gay and like Eric Pascal. Like, what are those guys gonna do with the five except be lunch? Like, Jokic is eating against them. Anthony Davis is eating against them. Like, DeAndre Ayton is putting those guys under the basket. Like, you're going to really have to stick with Gobert anyway. And we've seen if you run into a team that can stretch your defense out, like, they don't have the perimeter defenders to make up for that. So I think they're fraudulent again this year, and anyone that's praising them is fueling a lie.
Yeah, I see. Some of the takes I'm going through in my mind. There's a Ben Simmons take that I have, but I'm completely uncertain about that. And
oh my goodness, do you want to have a Ben Simmons segment? Because I honestly should have put that on the outline. I have tons of opinions on that.
I do too. I'm just thinking like just get him to the Timberwolves already. I don't.
Truthfully,
it would be ideal to not have to trade D'Lo for him, but like my thing is D'Lo, Ben Simmons. Like, what's the issue? Of course, you're not gonna get the greatest deal for Ben Simmons, who's on a 4-year and is not getting 8.25 because he didn't report to camp. And I think it's just. It's a lot of funny business between both sides, and I mean, at some point this was gonna happen, not maybe to this extent, but I think I'm a little more out of all the player holdouts. This one's definitely different because the leverage is just unprecedented, where a player who's on a 4-year, like I said, is holding out this early in his contract, and I don't know. I think maybe he gets traded before the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're a couple of weeks in and he's just not getting paid.
For me, like, I saw Jackson Frank also talking about this, but just like from a contractual standpoint, the NBA works by putting you in a draft where a team can just pick you up and you don't really have any say in that. Like, if we're going to be honest, like, Ben Simmons extended with Philadelphia because they could offer him a boatload of money on a 4-year extension. I think if he had been given a legitimate chance at free agency coming off of his rookie deal, like he would have seen that Philly isn't really a great fit. Like I agree with his points. Like Joel Embiid was also saying the truth that they have adjusted to try and fit, having Ben Simmons. But at the end of the day, having a 7-foot center that's going to have that much usage in the post already kind of skews what you're doing, on the court anyway. So I think if Ben Simmons had been given a legitimate chance at free agency, he would have been out anyway. And I think just that's kind of something that I side with players on getting to choose where they want to play more of the times. Like you really get drafted, and if the team wants, they can force you to be there for 8 years. I think a lot more people would be like empathetic if they viewed it from a standpoint of like their job and their employment. Like if my job was slandering me for an entire off season and then asked me to report because they couldn't transfer me and get a replacement, like I'm kind of with Ben on holding out. So also the fact that I've seen a lot of Sixers fans get really ignorant and annoying about the Ben Simmons hate has kind of pushed me to be on his side a bit further. So that's kind of just where I'm standing on the issue.
I'd say I'd have a lot more of a neutral stance, mainly because I really don't have a stake in this. But I will say, and I think people have referenced this a lot, but what JJ said on his podcast and what Matisse Thybulle said, I mean, it's pretty crazy that they got, like, Matisse, like, that's as close of as good of a source as you can really get, and him voicing his opinion, and it was really more of a neutral one, and I'd be a lot more in agreement with him. Not that I don't agree with you. I think players, although the empowerment in the NBA is certainly not ideal, but it's pretty high in comparison to other leagues. I'd say that both sides have contributed to this, and it's really not more of a both sides argument, but it's definitely a little more on the 76ers, and especially that culture where you're literally, there's no way you're going back after that. There's been bridges burnt, and
yeah,
it was just a lot of mismanagement, and I think the crux of it came essentially when Jimmy Butler left. I think that was the falling point, but Ben Simmons, some of his approach, I mean, I really don't think this is him 100%, although I say his reaction to the Philly fans being so pessimistic about it, and I think that's just Philly culture. It's a polarizing place to play in any sport, and I think the holdout is much more of a Rich Paul, kind of empowering his own client and all of that. Mm-hmm. But I think the question is like the more confusing part is where is he going to end up, because I mean I've seen some scenarios where it's gotten as crazy to the point to where people are like Kyrie for Ben Simmons if Kyrie can't play home games and all that. I think I heard that on Through the Wire, but I mean that's just really not realistic at all. But I mean I want him on the Timberwolves, wouldn't mind him on the Rockets, but I mean, do you have any team in mind that you'd like to see him on?
Timberwolves are bust for me, really. Like I don't really want to see him anywhere else but like the Timberwolves, because I just think the combination of him with Karl Anthony Towns would just make so much more sense than any destination. If I was really forced to pick a second team, like I guess I might say Cleveland, but like I don't feel great about that answer.
Yeah, Cleveland would certainly be a weird outcome. I mean,
like if they decide to move Sexton because they don't want to pay him for whatever reason, like if they end up waiting till December when they can trade a few more of their contracts, maybe throw in like Lowry Markkanen because they have a logjam and sign him for no reason.
Yeah, I was confused with the whole Lowry thing. I don't know where they're really going with that whole boat, but yeah, it's certainly weird. I'm just thinking, like I certainly do think Ben Simmons in a new environment is going to be very, very pivotal, and there's going to be signs of improvement, but it really is dependent on where he lands. And do you think, see, my thing is with the Timberwolves, is D'Lo going to be part of that trade? or is it just going to be Malik Beasley in pieces?
I have no problem giving up. Like,
Yeah,
you don't
I
want to
don't
give
either.
up D'Lo because I think he would also be a great fit in all of that, being like a great pull-up shooter to combine with Ben Simmons, do some inverted pick and roll, just regular pick and roll stuff. Like with the combination of Karl Anthony Towns, that's the ideal scenario in trading for Ben Simmons. But I think like I'm interested in getting the deal done. I'm interested in bringing in an all-star that's, signed long term, and I think going to be a fit with my best player.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how that unfolds and when it unfolds.
Yeah,
Because,
and they just need his defense so much as well, I think.
yeah, especially on that wing, it's been a gaping hole for like probably since KG or even before. It's been there for a while, and I mean, who better than literally
Yeah.
a perennial defensive player of the year at the wing? And I mean, I'd have see. My question to you is, where would you place Ben Simmons? Would you have him at point guard, or would you have him more at the 4 spot?
Yeah, I'd have him at the four. Like, I think it's time to stop doing the whole point guard thing with him. Unless he's really going to be able to put more pressure on defense, like at the point of attack, like at the perimeter. I just don't think it makes sense for him to have that much usage, like as a ball handler. I think I'm more interested in seeing him do like handoffs, play more like Bam Adebayo offensively, like to maybe take mid-range jumpers, corner threes. But I think the point guard stuff is done. He needs to play as a big or as a forward.
So would you have Anthony Edwards run the point guard at that point?
Yeah, I mean, you might as well. I think you can also just kind of put in Patrick Beverly as like the point guard, and then Ant will be the two. And between Anthony Edwards, Ben Simmons, and Karl Anthony Towns, who's a good passer, like Patrick Beverly isn't really going to do the point guard stuff. So you can just have those other guys really run the offense for the team.
I mean, either way, there's going to be another forward hole. Although Jaden McDaniels is certainly not a bad option to have at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and he may end up going away in the deal. Like it really just depends on how you form it. But I'm interested in getting Ben on that team. And another thing, I really just don't like how much blame he took for them losing that series. Like totally, they would have won and beat Atlanta if Ben Simmons was better. Like the fact he took, what was it, 3 or 4 shots in the fourth quarters over multiple games is just unacceptable. But like Joel was also hurt and he legitimately wore down and was not good late in those games. Like, not that that's all on him, but then Tobias Harris was also, not that great as well during the series. Doc Rivers rotations weren't all that great. The front office legitimately just like kind of did not add enough shooting and ball handling. So there's a lot of blame to go around. So the fact that this all became like even it got to the point where even Sixers players were saying this. Like Danny Green was talking about this on his podcast. Matisse Thybulle went on JJ Redick's podcast to talk about it. That like Ben was taking too much blame for it. Like sure, there's blame on his shoulders for this and for the multiple years in Philly where he did not grow his game or like change and adjust. Because Embiid went like he said went from being like the worst 3-point shooter on the team to now being, what was it, 40%. That should have been there for Ben as well, and the responsibilities on him for wanting that improvement. But come on, there were multiple reasons that team lost.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Matisse Thybulle, there was a lot of good audio pieces that you could pick up from that. I mean, Matisse said it himself. He was part of that loss. He said it, and he literally got no reaction, and that's from the player himself. So
yeah, like Ben Simmons passed up on that shot. Like Matisse Thybulle is the guy that missed the free throw. Like I think the blame is way more on Ben there because he could have had an easy 2 and maybe an and 1. I mean, but Matisse missed the shot. He fouled a 3-point shooter late. Joel had a crucial turnover late there to Gallinari. Like, there were still opportunities to win that series and win those games, even with Ben being as bad as he was.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just don't know how, either way, how that would really. Do you see in any way the 76ers making a move? And I mean, there's always an outsider's chance that they win the championship, but I don't really know, because losing Ben Simmons, I think, is going to show a lot more once he's gone on the defensive side. That that's going to go underappreciated once he does leave, of course. So I don't know, because you're not going to get better without Ben Simmons. So I just really don't know how that unfolds. I think they're going to have to retool some of the pieces there, but I think Ben Simmons is going to be the ultimate winner at the end of the day, because he's going to go to a spot that at least wants him. I mean, there's a low bar in Philly at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's really going to suck for Philly, because I think they're going to get a low return on what is a two-time All-Star who's on a long-term deal. Like, I think they're going to get a bad return for that. But at the end of the day, if they can get a return that at least helps the fit of this team better in the playoffs, that gives them some more perimeter creation so they don't have to run their offense through a 7-footer late in games, like, that would be ideal. Because, again, a lot of the problem for them, like, during the playoff series is that, no one could get Joel Embiid the ball. Like, no one could competently give him a post entry at times, and that just became problematic for them in the half court. So if you can at least maybe give yourself some more half court juice, you can kind of make up for that. And maybe if Matisse Thybulle is improved offensively, he can be on the court longer and help pick up the burden of losing Ben Simmons defensively. Tobias Harris also needs to be better, because he always escapes getting shots while we're so busy criticizing everything else in Philly. Where I just think, like, Tobias Harris got paid a 5-year max after, like, getting, after Philly traded for him there, and, like, he's never made an all-star game or all-star appearance or anything. He's never been in consideration for, like, defensive player of the year. Like, why is he getting to avoid all of this slander? It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's what it is.
Yeah, I think that's been the main story a lot, and it's going to continue to be the main story. I mean, it's kind of carried the latter half of the off season, but now that we're getting into the NBA season, is there anything else that's catching your eye? I mean, within the conference, I don't think we discussed this. There have been some moves that will kind of affect the Lakers in a way. And do you have any bold takes for the Lakers themselves? I personally have one that came to mind, and I think I think there's a good chance that they reach 60 wins, just because of the depth, mainly because of the depth. And I think Westbrook, for as how random, not random, but as how weird the move was in the timing and that it was, and how you literally predicted it randomly as well. I do think that there's going to be a lot of chemistry, and I think chemistry is going to be shown in that, and I do think they truly do have the potential to reach 60 wins.
Okay, so I got a question for you. 60-win team. We're obviously a title contender, if not a favorite. If we did lose in the Western Conference, like, what team do you think would it be that beat us? Like, who do you think is essentially our biggest rival or our toughest opponent within the conference?
See, that's just so much more of a loaded question given Kawhi's situation. Because really, the guy is super confusing. You don't know whether he's going to play or not within the season. If he does come back, I would say the Clippers, just because of the continuity that they seem to have. And I think Paul George is going to be a dark horse MVP candidate. And I just don't know. I think it's going to be more the Lakers versus the world within that division or within that conference. If Jamal Murray does come back fully and looks to have lots more improvement. I think MPJ is going to have a lot more improvement. Maybe the Nuggets, because I truly think the Nuggets are rising and rising. But I don't think there's one team that sticks out and is really going to be there, unless Klay Thompson just happens to defy all odds and is like his old self after 2 major injuries. Then I would say for sure the Warriors. But I think the Clippers are the more realistic option if Kawhi, and this is a big if he does come back.
Yeah, like that's what I look in the conference, and that's really just kind of the only answer I can come up with. It's like there are 2 teams that are big question marks on like important player, like 3 really, like with question marks about important players coming back, and I think those are all like our biggest threats within the conference. Like the Warriors with how Klay comes back, the Clippers with how Kawhi comes back, and the Nuggets with how Murray comes back. Like just kind of depending on how all 3 of those things play out, I think that's our biggest competition in the conference. Because again, I think Utah is fraudulent. I'm not a believer in Phoenix. I think we would have beat them if we were healthy. So, I'm not concerned about them this year if we're healthy against them. Dallas could be interesting just because of how problematic Luka Doncic is, but I don't think they improve their team that significantly that I'm worried about them. So, again, it's going to come down to how those 3 injuries play out in the conference. What about in the East, though? If we were to lose in the finals, who do you think would be
the Nets for sure, 100%? I think that's a no doubter. I truly think if everything goes right, I do think the Lakers and the Nets would be one for the ages, just because like now they're both upgraded. But I mean the Bucks getting to defend their title, and I really wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind the Bucks or the Nets. But I mean outside of that, maybe the Heat just because of the defensive potential. If Oladipo gets even close to that.
If we were to lose to the Heat, I would be so upset.
I would too. I think everything would have to go right for them, and a lot of things would have to go wrong. But I truly
I don't
think it's the Nets
believe
and the
in that
Bucks.
team as a title contender. They have no bench.
Yeah, their depth is quite horrendous. It's not the greatest sight to see, but I think everything is being set up for the Nets and the Lakers, and I think that's just a 6 or 7.
So not a believer in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, I would like to see a little more, just because it's less intimidating. But I think the Giannis and the LeBron head-to-head matchup in the finals is something a little reminiscent of what LeBron and Kobe could have been. Because I feel like it's towards the end of LeBron's career, even though it didn't seem like Kobe's. It turned out to be towards the latter half of his career. And I think at some point that just has to happen. And I think the trio versus trio there, although that is the same situation with the Nets, I think it's a little more. I think it's just a little more under the radar, cool to watch, and I think it'll still be enjoyable regardless, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I have like a competitive respect for like the Bucks as a playoff opponent if we were to match them, because just how good Giannis is defensively. I'm not a big believer in Drew Holiday as the point guard of that team, but the problems he can pose defensively are, very serious as well. Chris Middleton could be a problematic bucket any given game. So I think that's a team that I think could have some problems with us. That's a team that I would definitely want us to add. Like that's a reason I want us to add another spacing element, like a spacing 5 for a potential matchup against them.
Yeah, I think outside of that, if the Hawks randomly make it, that'd be a little weird to say, especially if they go. I don't know. I think in the Eastern Conference, it is a little more shallow in terms of contenders. I think in the West, it's been like that for a while, where really 3 to 5 teams could make it, and there's a lot more of a chance that they claim the title and take it from the East this year.
Yeah, since it's been a while since we did a podcast, I kind of want to do just a general NBA one where we kind of talk about, maybe the Eastern Conference for a bit more. Because there are some, maybe not title contending threats.
But there's lots of interesting
at least some
things
interest.
There.
Yeah, there are definitely some interesting things going on in that conference that deserve some discussion.
Yeah, I think the Bulls definitely are looking to have a more.
Yeah, and I even have mixed feelings about their whole team building process.
Yeah, for the moves that have been made, the ceiling isn't as high as you would like, but I think the floor is a little more important
Hmm.
right now. However, for the long term, I think that is going to be a little questionable. But yeah, it really is interesting, and I think maybe we should have a segment in the future where we just run down our top 15 on each conference and have a little dialogue here and there, and maybe
Hmm.
make some Lakers connections. We can try maybe for every team, try to make one Lakers connection and see how that goes.
Yeah. Since you brought up the Bulls, now I just kind of need to get my thoughts
I mean,
off.
if you need to get it
My
out, you
thoughts
got to
off
get
my
it
chest
out.
on them because like that is exactly how I feel about them. Like the floor is so much higher, and the team has been bad for a few years to the point where like a lot of the fans really want to get good. They want to see some playoff basketball, and they want to stop being like the seventh pick constantly, like and just a very depressing team with Jim Boylan as the coach. Like it's been a depressing few years for Bulls fans, and like I can tell that from being within the city. Even though I'm not necessarily like a diehard Bulls fan, like I'm friends with Bulls fans, like got Bulls fans within my family, so I can tell how they've been feeling about this. They want the team to be competitive and in the mix, but at the same time, it's like that. Even that, like the teams that are competitive and in the mix, like Portland has not enjoyed the fact that they're not an actual real playoff threat and that they're like first round exits or occasional second round or maybe if you're lucky get to the conference. They have not enjoyed being that kind of a team that much. Like Oklahoma City essentially broke up the Paul George Westbrook thing because it had been a few years of first round exits. Like so the fact that we don't have a great long term ceiling is at least slightly concerning, and I think a lot of Bulls fans are really riding the high of like, oh, we've got a few All Stars, and the team will be a threat for the playoffs, and all power to them. Enjoy that, but that I think I want to see a path towards something better. That's just my point. I'd like to see that exist.
Yeah, but for now, I think Chicago's been through enough for the past decade to where at least a little happiness wouldn't hurt. But yeah, I think from a
Hmm.
neutral point of view, the team building long term is definitely up in the air.
Yeah, in a year or two, if they can flip Vucevic for like some other star, like flip Vuce and Demar for Cat or something, whatever hypothetical makes us an actual threat in the future. That's kind of what I want to see next.
Man, I think the ceiling of Patrick Williams is a huge X factor for how their success
Yeah.
goes at that point.
Yeah, but before we turn into a Bulls podcast here, I just kind of want to, really discuss a few of the new players a bit more as a way to end this. I know you said Malik Monk is the guy that you're really wanting to see the most on this team. What's the lineup you want to see the most?
Mm, See, the thing with that question is it doesn't really have to be the starting lineup, and it also doesn't have
Hmm.
to be one where it's
Yeah,
the
it doesn't
most.
have to be a closing lineup like this. Just a funky lineup you want to see, even if it's like
Well,
just so their jersey numbers go in a certain order, whatever it is.
if it's just me, then I'd have to go with Russell Westbrook all the way at the end of the. I'm kidding. No, I'd like to see Russell Westbrook, and then a little Malik Monk, get a little Trevor Ariza, just so there's some defense there. LeBron at the 4, and then AD at the 5.
Yeah, I think everyone's favorite lineups this season are probably going to include Anthony Davis at the 5.
Yeah, there's just no viable number 5 that will keep me from throwing things. So I mean Howard
Until
here and
Kevin
there.
Love gets bought out.
Yeah, until Kevin Love gets bought out for sure.
Yeah. I mean, watching Dwight in Philly last year, he was worse than in 2020, and that was kind of the vibe I got watching him in this preseason game. That yes, he is
Found out
indeed
quite
a
quickly.
bit worse, but That's why we just need to win this chip so he can go out on top as a 2-time champ with the Lakers and a future Hall of Famer.
Oh yeah, definite Hall of Famer. If anyone puts that in the question, that there's no doubt he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Put that on that. But yeah, I think Malik Monk is up there, and now you got me hyped up on Hillbilly Mamba. So we're gonna sneak that one in there.
I really loved his energy in this game. Like he was competing as hard as he could and really trying. Like it's a preseason game, but it's bigger than that for him because he's a guy who just got his shot and inked a 2-year deal and has a lot to prove.
Yeah, what would your answers be to that? Hopefully, I didn't take yours with that with the Reeves mention.
Yeah, I mean, my ideal lineup that I really want to see is going to be Westbrook at the 1, Malik Monk at the 2. I want to see what THT at the 3 looks like because I do think he has kind of the wingspan to maybe handle that assignment. If not, like maybe Kent Bazemore in that spot at the 3. And then LeBron at the 4. I really want to see him spend so much time at the 4 this season. And then obviously Anthony Davis at the 5. I think that gives us, if THT can be a good solid defender and compete off ball as well, fight through screens and not lose his man, things like that, I think that gives us enough shooting and defense.
Yeah, either way, there's a lot of versatility. There's a lot of versatility to be had in the starting lineup. Or I
think we can do a lot of different things, like defensively, depending on whatever the team is doing. If we need to switch, if we need to play up high, if Anthony Davis can just drop and whatever it is, I think that lineup can do it.
For sure. Did you have any last thoughts before we do wrap this up?
As far as closing thoughts, watch the WNBA playoffs. They're amazing. They're going on right now. Depending on when this podcast comes out, I'm not sure if they'll be going on actually, but they'll probably still be going on. Maybe in the finals, but root for the Chicago Sky, root for the Las Vegas Aces. The WNBA playoffs have been really good. Yeah,
and shout out to Frank Vogel. I've been hyping up this whole podcast just for me to say that he's done an adroit scheme to get all of these players. So just shout out to him for everything that he's done and the GM, as some people would like to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, thanks for tuning into this podcast. If you're still here with us, definitely make sure to check us out on Twitter as well at Legacy Strive. From there, you can find our individual pages as well. Check out my YouTube. Check out Roze's YouTube. As the season comes back, we're really going to be pushing to bring you guys a lot more content.
Yep. If you do enjoy any of the last, let me check, hour, do make sure to leave us a 5-star. And we are slowly growing. And now once we get it truly into the grind, and we're going to have a few surprises into the next future podcast to get this thing up and running, and hopefully the start of a second title in the past 3 years. So, like we said, leave us a 5-star. Any comments, any suggestions on the Twitter realm, it is at Strive or Legacy Strive. And yeah, that about does it. Have a great one, and go Lakers.